All right, this is officially part 2 of completing the square, and in the last video I asked you to take a look at question number 5 and question number 6 and try and solve those, and we're going to solve them together as well. But I want to talk to you about approaching a quadratic like this and what you're going to want to do with your homework and what you're going to want to do with your problems that you encounter that are quadratics. Because you have choices to make, right? Maybe your favorite way of solving is by factoring. Maybe factoring works great for you. In that case, factor, right? So for a problem like this, where you see an x squared plus 6x plus 8, and you are a factoring guru, you know that this is going to be an x times x to get your x squared. And then remember, we're looking for two numbers that multiply to be 8, but when I add them together, I get a 6. What could those be? This is that strategy, you know, where we had our 8 here and our 6 here, and we're like, what are those two numbers going to be? Oh, it could be a 4, and it could be a 2, because 4 times 2 is 8, and 4 plus 2 is 6. So maybe factoring has become a process that is super speedy for you right now. Okay, if not, that's okay, but it's just one way to solve your quadratic. So what you would continue to do here would be to set your x plus 4 equal to 0, to set your x plus 2 equal to 0. And here we get, after you subtract 4 from both sides, x equals a negative 4, subtract 2, and we get x equals a negative 2. Now remember, that's not the only way to solve, okay? So another way we could solve this problem is by using the quadratic formula. So we've worked on that a little bit as well. So quadratic formula, right? That's the x equals opposite b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Little sing-song for you there. Okay, so that is also a way you could have solved for negative 4 and negative 2 using the quadratic formula. And then completing the square just is another way, right? So if completing the square is blowing your mind, then stick to these other two and get good at those. But completing the square is a really nice skill to use because you will be using it later on in upper level mathematics as you go on to geometry and algebra 2. So I want you to see it, and I want you to try it, and if it goes great for you, great. If it's something you'll need extra practice with, that's okay as well. Okay? So all of these are good ways to solve a quadratic. And you can pick what works for you. All right, so completing the square. I'm going to do the same problem that we did right here with factoring, only this time I'm going to complete the square. So we have an x squared plus 6x. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 8 from both sides. I'm going to move that constant over, and I'm going to make a square, because this square helps me to complete the square and know what number I need to add to make this a perfect square trinomial. All right, so remember, it's kind of like a process we use with factoring. So I know there's an x squared term, and I know there is 6 x's, so I'm going to divide those evenly. And if it's not an even number, you can still do this process. It just requires that you dive into the world of fractions, so that gets a little bit more complicated, but not impossible. And then the number that is going to complete the square, right? What number goes in here? This is the part that needs to be completed. We need to complete the square in that space. Well, I know to get these areas, I'm going to have an x and a plus 3 times an x and a plus 3. That's going to be my perfect square trinomial, but there's a piece that's missing and I need to make sure that that gets added in. And it looks like that piece is going to be a 3 times 3 or a plus 9. So if I decide to add a plus 9 on this side of my equation, I also want to add a plus 9 on this side of my equation. And I start to rewrite and rework my perfect square trinomial here. So it looks like x plus 3 quantities squared, right, because those two are being multiplied by themselves, equals 1. And in this point, in this step, this is where we can take the square root of both sides. Okay, so the squaring and the square root kind of cancel each other out. We get an x plus 3 is equal to plus and minus 1. Okay, and I'm going to keep these answers from above right here so you can kind of have a reminder of what they look like. So my two answers are going to come from x plus 3 being set equal to 1 and x plus 3 being set equal to a negative 1. Okay, so this is the point right here where you bust it apart and make two separate equations. As you subtract 3 from both sides, we get x is equal to a negative 2. And as you subtract 3 from this equation, we get x and negative 1 minus 3 more is a negative 4. So you can see that we got the same exact answer for our x-intercepts, our zeros of the function, our roots of the function, by factoring and by completing the square. Okay, so there you go. A couple more examples of completing the square. Hope that helped you guys out. Good luck on your assignment this week, guys. If you need some extra help during office hours, please come and see me. All right, you're doing a great job. Keep up the good work. I'm proud of you. I'll talk to you soon.